What's up, everybody? I hope everybody's having a good time in sort of Convallaria and having a lot of luck in whatever content they're trying to clear right now and enjoying the game overall. Today, I want to go over a tier list for our trinkets and sort of Convallaria, and I want to kind of talk about what value they have and how they're good and in what places they're good, and then place them on a tier list. And so what I've done is I've broken down each trinket into 3 categories, and that's going to be accessibility, viability, and utility. And I've basically taken those 3 things into consideration before placing them into the tier lists, which I'll explain with each trinket as we cover them. So yeah, without any further ado, let's just get right into it and look right at them. Now, the first thing we have to acknowledge when we're looking at these trinkets is that we do not have equal drop rates. You're less likely to get some trinkets than others, and so that inherently affects the value of those trinkets. I've been playing since release, and some trinkets I still don't have, let alone anything more than just 1 copy of. So without being able to 5-star a trinket, that greatly diminishes the value of that trinket potentially, and so that has a huge effect on those items. So I just wanted to give you that. It's something that you can find in the game in the shop. You can list these values and these drop rates, and it's so you have an idea why maybe you don't have so many of certain trinkets. Yeah, but moving on. The first trinket we're going to have a look at is going to be the Berserker's incense. Now, this is an item I don't personally own. I've had to read online about it and try to take in other accounts on the item and base my opinion on that. And based on what I'm seeing and what I'm getting back, is that this is an item that does something great in raising your 10% damage for 2 turns, but you can only do it once per battle. Unless you get a 5-star, given its rarity, it's not very likely you're going to be able to get it up there. And even at 5-star, it's a 20% boost, which is great. And it lasts for 2 turns still, but you can only use it twice per battle. And so this item is incredibly niche. I can't think of too many settings where you're really going to want it other than deflect those really high damage counts and very select situations where you don't really need it anyways. So I don't really think this item holds a lot of value, and because of that, I'm going to go ahead and rank it a rank 3. Now, the next item that's going to be on our list is going to be Coexist armor. What makes Coexist armor so great is that it's rare. So it's not legendary, it means it's very accessible. It's easy to get, it's easy to 5-star. The next thing about it that's fantastic is that it negates both magical and physical damage when you're healthy up to 10%. Now, early game that doesn't really matter, but late game, you're really trying to survive those fights. You're getting hit hard, especially by those weapon trial bosses and so on and so forth. They have the potential to one-shot quite a few members of your team, and you're hitting you with AoEs and things like that. This item really comes in clutch. Now, I wouldn't suggest it for my tanks, ironically. I'd suggest it for my backline units, my healers in particular, or my buffers that you don't want to take a ton of damage, and that you just need them to survive those every once in a while AoE or big hits that you can't avoid. With that said, I'd rank the Coexist armor tier 0. The next item we're going to discuss is cooling powder. This is a legendary item that gives you an increased healing effect up to 16% and also grants an immunity to receiving no healing. And so it basically guarantees that you're able to be healed at any given time. Now, some units in the game give you a debuff that doesn't allow you to be healed, and that can really hurt your units, in particular your tanks. And that's where I think this item belongs mostly. I don't think it really has too much of a place on all units because you don't necessarily want them all getting hit. And everybody knows in the game, zoning, controlling the way the flow of the game works, especially in game, is what you have to do. So your tanks are the primary ones that are going to take the damage, and you want them to always be able to be healed, especially in that late game scenario. So with that said, I would rank this item tier 0.5. The next item we're going to discuss is the Crystal Burst Armor. And so this is a legendary item that increases your max HP by up to 10%, and also increases your strike back damage up to 25%. This is a pretty good item. It doesn't belong to everybody, obviously. It can do a job on other units that maybe just need to get higher HP, like your tanks and so on and so forth. However, this item does best on units that are able to strike back, so there's a little bit of a niche there. However, it's a great item all in all for any and all units that just need that extra HP. I do think it's decent and even in-game scenarios, because your frontline units that strike back usually are a little more bulky. So with that said, I think it's decent. I would rank this item a tier 1. The next item we're going to hit on the list is going to be Disaster Bottle. And so this item right here is phenomenal. I can't say enough about it. It is a rare item, so it's not hard to get, and at 5 stars, it is an instant ability that inflicts 2 random debuffs on an opponent. I think it has a range of 5, so it's huge. You can lunk that thing, it hits a target, and gets 2 random level 2 debuffs on that enemy, and has a cooldown of only 2 turns. It can be used multiple times in a single fight. I believe 3 times in total at 5 stars. It is fantastic. Any unit that you have, you're not sure what item to put on them, or maybe they specifically are a debuffer, this is a great option. This goes on them, it gives you an extra debuff on your targets, and it keeps them nerfed. It's especially powerful against bosses and those boss fights. With that said, it has a lot of longevity, it has a lot of viability, it can be used in most any and all circumstances, situations, and it's highly desirable. And so for that reason, also accessible, I would rank it tier 0. The next item we're going to go over is a personal favorite of mine, and that is Evergreen pendant. And so this item is a rare item, so it's highly accessible, and at 5 stars, every single heal that you get is going to give you 1 random level 2 buff for 2 turns. That is awesome, especially on characters where that have an individual heal of their own or heal each turn, or even if you're using a lifesteal residence, it's insane. If your healers have a passive heal that they give each turn, it gets even nuttier. Units like Rawia and Dandelion really benefit from this item, or that's what I believe. I use this item all the time, even in-game, and so I would rank it a tier 0.5. Now the next item we're going to go over is Fancy Hat. And so this item is a legendary item, and it grants immunity to disrupt. When healthy, your magic defense will be increased by up to 15%. This is a phenomenal item. This is absolutely essential on those units that absolutely have to use their active skills, passive skills, and so on and so forth. This item is an easy shoe-in for your healers that you need to make sure that can heal every single turn without any interruption, and then that magic defense gives them that protection from that AoE that's going to pierce through your front line or your zone of control, and so this item is phenomenal for them. For me, I think it belongs in other units too. It's not just limited to those healers. Anybody that actively needs to use those active skills in order to do their job benefits from this item. With that said, I would rank this item at tier 0. Next on our list is going to be the Flying Blade Armguard. This is a legendary item that has an instant ability that allows you to do piercing damage up to 15% to an enemy's HP. This can be used up to 3 times per battle with a 1-turn cooldown at 5 stars. In my opinion, this is a relatively rare item. However, its ability to do piercing damage is huge. That's just true damage, nothing stopping it, it's just hitting the target and it's doing it, period, dot. This item also activates passive abilities like Hasna, like Auguste, and like Sophia. Really, really powerful for that reason. So without getting too much further into it, this is a shoe-in item for your damage dealers or units that you just want to do extra damage, especially if they have that passive that benefits from it. And so I would rank this item at tier 0. The next item on our list is going to be Hunter's Intuition. And so this item right here is a legendary, and what it does at 5 stars is when alert is triggered, it deals 25% more damage. Moreover, if a foe uses a skill within range of alert, it will also be triggered. This item is unique in that it's the only one that increases damage for alert skills. It's a little bit nutty that it's a 25% increase on that damage, and so units like, of course, like your Fake Owls, and then your Momo especially, I use this all the time on Momo, the damage gets nutty. It's awesome. This item is phenomenal for that reason. It's not too terribly hard to get. It's got a decent drop rate. However, I don't think it necessarily belongs on every character. Obviously, characters that don't have alert don't benefit from this item. So with that said, I would rank this item tier 0.5. The next item we're taking a look at now is going to be Luxite Great Shield. And so this is a legendary item that at 5 stars gains a physical shield with a value of 60% HP for 2 turns. That's an instant ability, by the way. This effect cannot be dispelled. It can be used 2 times per battle with a cooldown of 3 turns. And so for me, this item is a little bit niche. It's not bad at all. Getting it up to 5 stars isn't easy. It's not a common drop, in my opinion. It's seldom found. I only have 1, so at 1 star I'm getting 40% HP and I can only use it 1 time. I'm not really too fond of that. Some people might have tons of them. I'm having a hard time imagining that's the case because this item is listed as one of the items with a lower drop rate, and so for me this item doesn't have a tremendous amount of value for that reason. On top of that, it's a physical shield. It's not magical. It doesn't just negate damage, period, dot. And there's many times where magic damage is a factor, and so it would just pierce that regardless of that physical shield. It doesn't mean that this item's terrible. Units like T-Don might love this item. For me, it's a little bit too niche, and so I'm going to place it tier 2. Now the next item is the Maverick's cloak. So this item is a legendary item, and at 5 stars, when there are no allies within 3 tiles around the character, their attack and defense is increased by 12%, and their crit rate is increased by 20%. That is awesome. That is a huge stat boost, especially for those damage dealers. But to be far away from your team in order to get it is a bit of a kill. So units like Cole and so on and so forth really benefit from this item. However, at in-game, you're not really moving those units off on their own to go pick off those units by themselves because they're so susceptible to damage. Usually the stats are slated in your opponent's favor and they're going to one-shot you and really heavily hurt you regardless. And so this is not the best item for that reason. It's a little bit niche. It does a lot for you if you're fighting weaker opponents, but then at that point you don't really need the extra stats. So this item, in my opinion, falls off in game, and for that reason I'm going to rate it at tier 1. The next item that we're going to hit is the Mist Necklace. Now this is a rare item that at 5 stars, before being actively attacked, before being the keyword, it inflicts 2 random level 1 debuffs on the attacker for 2 turns. It has a 2-turn cooldown. Now, getting this to 5 stars isn't too terribly hard at all. I think this item might be a little bit slept on in that it has the potential to do some pretty decent things. However, what really kills it is that cooldown effect. If this just procced every single time you got attacked, period, dot, it can get nutty and fast. It can turn any blocking tank into a debuffer. However, that's not the case. And on top of that, not only do you have the cooldown, it's only a level 1 debuff. And so that kind of hurts it in some ways. I think it's got some decent potential. I think it can do quite a few interesting things, but for the most part, it is not the best option. And so for that reason, I would rank it at tier 3. Now the next item we're going to cover is the Mysterious Deflection Device. And so this item is a legendary item, and at 5 stars, it decreases the damage you receive from ranged attacks by up to 12%. In my opinion, this item is incredibly niche. For it to only affect ranged attacks and only up to 12% is not the best thing in the world, in my opinion. I think there's so many more items that can do so many more things for you in conflict, and that it has very, very, very niche circumstances. And even in those niche circumstances, I really don't think it's to your best benefit to necessarily run this. I can't think of a situation where it's just an absolute must-have. And so, for that reason, I'd place this item at tier 4. Next to be discussed is the Mystery Guardian. And so this is a legendary item that at 5 stars, when attacked from the front, you gain 25% bonus physical defense, and you become immune to no defense attribute debuffs. And so basically anything that tries to debuff your defense attributes, both magic and physical, it's negated completely. On top of that, if you're using a tank that blocks and turns towards your opponent, then you're automatically getting that 25% bonus physical defense on those physical attacks. This is a pretty phenomenal item. It's not necessarily easy to 5-star, however, it's really, really powerful for those tanks and those situations, and it does a really good job. And for that reason, I would place this item at tier 0.5. The next item we're going to discuss is the Old Scrolls of Auguste. This is a legendary item that allows you to have an instant ability that grants one other ally at 5 stars a level 2 buff and speed up 1 for 2 turns. This can be used up to 5 times per battle with a 2-turn cooldown. Now it has to be said, this is a very rare item. In my account, I've been playing since launch. I only have 1 copy. However, it is a phenomenal item. It is basically an urgent order that you can cast even at 1 star 3 times per battle just for free on top of urgent order. Even at that 4-turn cooldown, I don't mind it. This item has been such a great instrument. It is busted. I've absolutely loved having it. And so for that reason, I'm going to absolutely rank this item tier 0. Next up on the list is going to be the Origin Hourglass. And so this is a legendary item that at 5 stars increases your physical and magical attack up to 8% and grants an immunity against move down and speed down. For me, this is a phenomenal item. I don't think it's utilized enough amongst all builds and guides online. This item is one of the few items that gives you a magic attack up by a flat rate, and it's just phenomenal. It's really, really good. To make you impervious or immune to those move down and speed down debuffs as well is also a really good thing that we haven't really had too much issue with in the game so far, but it's still really, really potent and really, really powerful in my opinion. And so for that reason, I'm going to rank this item tier 0. Next up on the list is going to be the Rejection Mask. And so this is a rare item that at 5 stars, magical damage taken is decreased by 30% with a 2-turn cooldown. This is an easy item to 5-star, and it fits a niche, admittedly, where it reduces that magical damage by a pretty decent chunk at 30%. I've used this in boss fights and in big fights where I know I'm about to take a lot of magical damage, and I've really enjoyed having it. Simple and sweet and highly effective, but not for every circumstance and not for every, well, not for every character in every situation. But anyways, for that reason, I'm going to rank this item tier 1. Next up is going to be the Roaring Flint. And so this is a legendary item that at 5 stars has an instant ability that deals fire-piercing damage equal to 20% of the character's HP to all enemies within 2 tiles around the target. It can be used up to 2 times per battle with a 3-turn cooldown. And so this is a really cool item. I don't personally have it. It is very rare. It has some of the lowest drop rates amongst some of the other items on this list, and so it's really hard to get. However, for that effect to do piercing damage up to 20%, even at 1 star at 10% is really, really good. And because it's an attack, it also applies those passive abilities that people might have, like Hasna and so on and so forth. It's really, really good. It's really, really cool. I'm interested in getting it and messing around with it and testing it myself. However, this item, it just feels like it's way too powerful not to appreciate in all circumstances, even off of just reading it. With that said, I'd rank this item at tier 0. Next up is going to be the Shroud of Void. And so this is a legendary item with, at 5 stars, an instant ability decreases magic damage taken by up to 70%, which can be activated up to 3 times per battle. This effect lasts for 2 turns, and disregard where it says it can be used only 1 time per battle right there. Afterwards, it's redundant. It can be used more than 1 time per battle at 5 stars. However, this is an incredibly rare item. So rare that when I first saw this, I had to look it up, make sure it was like unreleased content or if it wasn't just fan-made content. So yeah, with that said, like, that tells you everything you need to know. I don't have one. It's very, very rare. If you get one, you're not likely to get more than 1 star. It only is going to reduce magic damage taken by 50% and only 1 time per battle. That's not good. And so because it's so niche and it's so rare, I think this item largely is unusable and it's not even really worth too much mention. So I put it at tier 4. Next up is going to be the Space Time Ring. And so this is a legendary item that at 5 stars allows you to teleport behind a character of an ally within 3 tiles, and it also increases the attack by 10% of that character for 1 turn. It can be used 2 times per battle at 5 stars, and it has a pre-cooldown, as in you can't use it until the battle's already started, and that pre-cooldown is 2 turns. And so at 1 star, this only allows you to use it once per battle, has that same pre-cooldown of 2 turns, and it only increases your attack by 2%. However, the utility of this item to be able to reposition is pretty powerful. I really enjoy having this ring and using it. With that said, it's also very, very rare. So it's not likely you're going to get this 5 star, or anytime near soon you're going to get this 5 star unless you're just heavy whaling it. Regardless of that, I think it's a really fun item. And so for me, I would rank this item at tier 1. Next up is going to be the Spring Pill. And so this is a legendary item that at 5 stars allows an instant ability that heals the character for 30% of his HP and dispels 2 debuffs. It can be used 2 times per battle with a cooldown of 3 turns. So everybody loves a self-heal. There's nothing wrong with this item. It's not the easiest to 5 star in my opinion. I don't have too many of them. Maybe your account's different. Regardless, even at 5 stars with a 30% HP heal and dispelling 2 buffs, I don't think it's the best item in the world. This item has most of its utility, in my opinion, early game. Late game, it really kind of falls off, and there's not too many times where I'm like, man, I wish I had that. In fact, I can't think of a single time. So, and then I have to also say, the 2 debuffs, it seems cool that it dispels 2 debuffs, but also don't get misled by that. 2 debuffs means 2 stacks. So if you have infection bleeds stacked up to 6, this is only going to remove 2 stacks of that infection, not all 6 of them. And so that needs to be said and taken into consideration when you're looking at this item. With all of that brought into it, I would rank this item at tier 2. Next is going to be the Spring Tonic. And so this is a epic item. By the way, I've been saying rare this whole time, but what I meant was epic. Sorry, it's gold. This is an epic item, and it's fairly easy to 5 star, and at 5 stars, it is an instant ability that heals 45% of the user's HP. It can only be used 1 time per battle. And so, for me, I've really struggled with this item. I've used it early game, and I've not really enjoyed it. I've often wondered if I couldn't have something else or just regretted having it, and then come in game, I just don't ever look at it or even think about it. For it to only be used 1 time in battle is kind of crazy to me. I think this item amongst all items, honestly, tier 2 and below, needs a buff in order for it to have tremendous utility. That's just my opinion. You might disagree with me. Get down in the comments and talk to me about it if you do. However, for me, this item just doesn't get it, and so that's why I rank it at tier 4. Next up is going to be the Thorny Ring. And so this is an epic item that at 5 stars, when injured, it increases your attack by 12%. This is an item that's easy to 5 star, however, it falls off hard at end game, in my opinion. It might have some interesting utility in the early game, however, when you're injured, you're getting a flat increase and decrease to your damage and or damage received. And so you've got to be considerate of that. That 12% attack increase barely offsets it, and honestly, I don't think it's the best for that reason. And then in game, it only gets worse because you can't really survive off being low HP. Those units that do survive off being low HP, you generally don't want them to, and you're not really focused on their attack, in my opinion. I haven't really found too many utilities for this ring, and I've tried on numerous builds on numerous characters. Kind of breaks my heart, and so for that reason I rank this ring at tier 4. Next up is going to be the True Lens, and so this is a legendary item that at 5 star increases your physical attack by 5%. When attacking from Highland, you get a crit increase of 20%. Now this item is phenomenal. I really enjoy using it. Getting that Highland bonus isn't the most difficult, but it's also not constant. It's not something that's going to always happen. When you can get that Highland bonus, that 20% crit is phenomenal, and it's really, really nice to have and very enjoyable. But at that 5% physical attack increase, it doesn't seem like the best thing in the world, but it's nice. It's a good little chunk of attack to add to your character. So all in all, this item could be ranked higher in my opinion. I really kind of struggle with this. Might be even slightly controversial, but for me, I rank this item at tier 0.5. Next up is the unique coat, and so this item is an epic, and at 5 stars it reduces physical damage taken by 30% with a 2-turn cooldown. This item is pretty phenomenal. It's a little bit niche in that it doesn't affect magical damage. However, it's very solid in that it has a 30% reduction. With that 2-turn cooldown, I don't know that you necessarily want it on a unit that's going to constantly take physical damage. Maybe you do. I don't know. Regardless, it's a pretty decent item. I often would use it in boss fights, but outside of boss fights, I don't really give it too much consideration unless I'm just desperately trying to fill a slot, which I don't feel like is the case too often. So yeah, I don't know. For me, and for that reason, I would rank this item at tier 1. Now, to round off our list, we're going to go over the last legitimate rare items. First of which, on the left, is going to be the armored gauntlet. This item generally is not useful once you get to where you get other trinkets, and it just falls off hard. The next item in the middle is going to be your wolf fang necklace with a max percentage of 6% physical attack up, and then on the right is the item you might utilize the most, and that is the scorched sorceress's hat with a magic defense of 12%. Largely these items fall off, and once you get other trinkets, and especially once you get closer to in-game, you might not utilize these items anymore, with the exception of maybe that sorceress's scorched hat, maybe that wolf fang necklace. Either way, these items, in my opinion, kind of just drop off. You know, towards in-game, these items really are not worth the investment. The general stats that you get off of them pale in comparison to epics and especially legendaries. And so, for that reason, I would rank the armored gauntlet tier 5 and the other two tier 4 because you might be able to use them a little longer. So yeah, that's my tier list and a general rundown on each trinket in the game. Hopefully we get some more in the game here soon. As I said earlier, these trinkets that come in at tier 2 and below, with the exception of the rares, I really think need a buff. I think it would be really advantageous to the game to do something for them, to give them a little more diversity. Maybe I should do a video on how I'd buff them, and we have some fun, theory craft and what we could do with the game to really help it out, and this, that, and the third. I don't know. Would it even reach developers? I don't know. Regardless, that's my opinion. That's what I think. If you agree, if you disagree, whatever it might be, get down in the comments, let me know. I really appreciate all the support I've been getting from everybody. Drop me a like and a subscribe if you don't mind, or if you can, if you haven't already. And yeah, thanks for everything. I'll catch you later. Bye.